was worried that I was having some internet problems in the last attempted recording, so I'm going to do it again, and I just didn't want it to be messed up. But anyway, so chapter 31, Emrys and Shim got chased off their path by warrior goblins into the haunted marsh, where they were attacked by these weird glowing lights, and the last we heard, Emrys had collapsed into the muck and heard a scream. So this is chapter 32, called Dark Fate. Is you alive? Not sure, was my only answer. I sat up and shook the fog from my second sight. Shim sat on one side while my staff, caked with rancid-smelling mud, lay on the other. Shim, his face lined with worry, pulled on my tunic. Where is we? Surveying our surroundings, I took in the strangest room I had ever seen. Polished stone walls, floor, and ceiling enclosed us, without even a slit for a window. Yet a quivering blue light filled the room, like the light from a candle just before it burns out. But no candle could be seen. I shivered, though not from cold. I could not be certain why, but a feeling of foreboding hung in the air, as if Shim and I were about to be sliced up for someone's supper. Shim slid closer. This place is frighteningly like a dungeon. I agree. Suddenly he pointed. Boneses! With a start, I viewed the shadowy pile next to us. It was indeed a mass of bones, picked perfectly clean. In the quivering light, I could make out ribs, leg bones, and more than a few skulls. People's skulls. Then I swallowed, wondering whether our own remains would soon rest there. Then I noticed that several other piles, though not of bones, surrounded us. One held thin slabs of gray stone, stacked almost as tall as my staff. Another contained polished balls of wood, carved in varied sizes and etched with strange signs. Some smaller than fingernails and others larger than heads, the balls seemed to have been carefully arranged for some purpose. Still another pile contained bundles of sticks, sorted by size as well as number. In the far corner of the room, I noticed strange white cubes marked with black dots on their sides. Spools of black and white yarn were piled here, bizarre shells from the sea there. Iron bowls overflowed with pebbles and seeds of many shapes. In the middle of the floor sat a thick, square rug that was divided into smaller red and black squares. On many of these squares stood carved wooden pieces, each of them about as high as my waist. Attacking dragons, galloping horses, howling wolves, warring goblins, kings and queens, plus others I could not begin to recognize. Back in Caer Vedwid, I had heard of a game called Essish, sometimes shortened to chess. But that game was played on a board, not a rug, and in any event, chess pieces did not include dragons, or goblins. On the stone wall opposite us, a dense jumble of blue markings wavered in the light. Columns of slashes, dots, and squiggles, running in several directions, covered much of the surface. There were thousands of squares, triangles, and meshes of crossed lines, as well as circles divided into sections, much as a round loaf of bread is sliced. There were runes, letters, numbers, and symbols squeezed under and over, inside and outside, the rest of the markings. Too bad, growled a deep voice behind us. We spun around to see a pale, hairless head poking through the crack of a door. Slowly, the door swung open, revealing a body as round as the head, wearing a robe resembling a cloth sack with several pockets, a necklace of rough stones, and bare feet. I froze, fearful that this was another shifting wraith, or perhaps something worse. The hairless head, with rows of wrinkles gathering about 2 triangular ears, leaned toward us. One large, shriveled wart sprouted like a horn from the middle of the forehead. Eyes even blacker than my own watched us, unblinking, for several seconds. Then the mouthful of misshapen teeth responded again. Definitely too bad. Reaching for my staff, I scrambled to my feet, which was made more difficult by Shim clinging to my leg. Who are you? Almost no chance they'll live to see out the day, muttered the strange figure, entering the room. Definitely too bad. Though my voice quaked, I repeated my question. Who are you? The black eyes, seeming terribly old, observed me for a moment. That is a difficult question, my pet. Something about the words my pet made me cringe. Who am I? Continued the creature, pacing slowly around us like a vulture examining its carrion. Hard to tell, even for me. Today I'm someone, tomorrow someone else. The wrinkled face bent toward me, showing more crooked teeth. And who are you? I gave a sigh. The truth is, I'm not really sure. At least, my pet, you are honest. The circling continued, the bare feet slapping on the stone floor. Perhaps I can tell you a bit about who you are, though I should warn you it's rather disappointing. For starters, you're too skinny to provide more than a mouthful or two, even with your little friend thrown in. Shim squeezed my leg harder. Worse still, my pet, you look far too weak to be of any help to my wager, and I do so detest losing. An icy finger ran down my spine. I know who you are. You're Domnu. Very clever, my pet. The hairless hag stopped circling. She ran a hand across the top of her head, ruminating. But cleverness won't be enough to win my wager. What wager are you talking about? Oh, nothing of any importance. I merely made a little wager with someone who expects you not to survive until tomorrow. She shrugged. Die today, die tomorrow. What difference does it make? I should not have bet on you, but I could not resist the odds. I shuddered, remembering what Cairpree had said about this being whose name means dark fate. Neither good nor evil, friend nor foe. She simply is. Who did you wager against? Domnu's bare feet slapped against the stone floor as she moved to the wall covered with strange markings, still trembling in the unsteady light. She spat on the index finger of her left hand, which immediately turned blue. Then, using the finger as a paintbrush, she stretched to reach as high as she could and drew a squiggly line through one of the circles. Time to start using a new wall, she grumbled. With a glance in our direction, she added, Must keep score, my pets. I do dislike losing a wager, but I must keep score, and it certainly does look like I will lose this one. You mean, piped Shim, that we is going to die? Domnu shrugged again. It certainly looks that way. I demanded, Who did you wager against? No one you know, although he does seem to have developed a genuine dislike for you. Who? She scratched the back of her bald head. That fool, Rita Gower, of course. Rita Gower? The spirit battling Dagda? Domnu grunted carelessly. I suppose so. At least it was so a few thousand years ago when I last checked. But as to who is winning and who is losing, my pet, I have no idea. They must keep their own tallies. But it's not a game, it's serious. Domnu stiffened. Games are serious, my pet. As serious as life itself, for that, too, is just a game. You don't understand. I stepped closer, with Shim still holding tight to my leg. Their battle is for all of Finkyra, as well as the earth, and more beyond that. Yes, yes, said the hag, yawning. They have an ongoing wager. No, it's more than that. She stared at me, dumbfounded. More than that? How can anything be more than that? A wager is the purest chance of all. Make your choice, place your bet, then whatever happens, happens. Up or down, life or death, it doesn't matter, as long as you collect your winnings in the end. I shook my head. It does matter. Whether Dagda or Rita Gower wins will determine what the odds will be on their next wager. Yes, I know. Domnu's feet slapped over to the rug of red and white squares. She bent low to face one of the pieces, the figure of a red dragon. Nonchalantly, she tickled under its scaly chin. In the quivering light, I could not be sure, but it almost seemed like the dragon's head jerked slightly, and that two thin trails of smoke drifted out of its nostrils. Their game's of no interest to me, she concluded, even as she gave the dragon's ear a tweak. I have enough trouble keeping track of my own. Shim clutched tighter. I is scared. Very, very, very scared. I don't know why you should be, replied Domnu with a crooked grin. Dying isn't so bad after the first time. She placed her foot on the back of the dragon piece, reached for the figure of the Black King, and grabbed it roughly by the neck. I could have been mistaken, but as she lifted the king off the rug, I thought I heard a faint, anguished squeal. Still grasping the neck, she began polishing the king's crown on her sack-like robe. I suppose we should play a game of some kind before I send you on your way, my pets. It will take our minds off your impending deaths and my impending loss. Do you prefer dice or sticks? We need your help, I pleaded. She replaced the black king, dropping the piece with a thud. Then, feet slapping on the floor, she ambled over to the pile of sticks. She plucked a small bundle from the pile and contemplated it. I think 3s would be better than 13s today, don't you? I have the feeling in my bones that this is a low-number day. Bones! Perhaps you would rather play bones. Please, we need to get to the shrouded castle. The shrouded castle? She pulled a stick from the bundle and spat on it. Why ever would you want to go there? A goodly question, muttered Shim, hugging my shin. Besides, Domnu continued, all the while examining the stick, if I send you there, then you will certainly die, and I will lose my wager. Won't you please help us? I'm afraid not, my pet. She twirled the stick in the palm of her hand. I scowled. If you're not going to help us, then why don't you just put us back in the haunted marsh to get it over with? Shim looked up at me with amazement. I may well, my pet. After all, I did promise Rita Gower that I would not keep you safe here all day. Rules of the wager, you understand, and I never break the rules. She lowered her voice. Besides, he would notice if I did. She inserted the stick back into the bundle, then tossed it carelessly onto the pile. But why the hurry? We still have time for a game or two. We do not have time, I exclaimed. Isn't there any way we can convince you? The only question, she went on, scanning the room, is which game to choose. Of course, chess. Though I don't suppose you know anything about the rules, young as you are. No matter. I just come over here and I will teach you a bit, and bring that brave warrior there, the one clinging to your leg. She walked back over to the rug and glanced around at the chess pieces. Too tall, I think. With an expression of concentration, she placed the palm of her hand on the crown of the Red Queen. She muttered a phrase softly, then began to press slowly downward. To my astonishment, the Red Queen, as well as all the other chess pieces, grew steadily smaller until they were only about half of their original size. Now the tallest pieces were about the same height as Shim. Proudly, Domnu waved at the chess pieces. It really is one of my better inventions, this game. A great success wherever it goes. Even the humans, with their limited powers of concentration, have adopted it. It grieves me to see how they try to oversimplify the rules of the game. The only drawback is that it is best played with 2 people. After finding the right partner can be very difficult indeed. Raising her thin eyebrows, she sent waves of wrinkles across the top of her scalp. Especially if you have a few visitors, as I do. By the way, most of my visitors come by the front door. Whatever possessed you to use the back door? I might never have found you if you hadn't knocked on the doorstep. I didn't knock. Of course you did, though I almost didn't hear you with that awful din outside. But I didn't knock. My pet, you are forgetful. You knocked with something hard. It must have been your head, or perhaps that unattractive little pendant of yours. Suddenly, remembering the Galator, I clutched it tightly. It was no longer glowing. Swiftly, I replaced it under my tunic. I might have left you there, but I haven't had any company for games in so long. 2 centuries, at least. Then, after I brought you in, I realized you must be the ones Rita Gower had wagered would not survive the day, if you should ever turn up here. Her ancient eyes narrowed. I only wish I had seen you before I agreed to the wager. Domnu started pacing around the rug, inspecting each of the pieces carefully. Although the wavering light made the whole room seem to vibrate, it struck me that each of the chess pieces trembled slightly as she approached. Then, when she passed in back of a gallant-looking black stallion, the horse seemed to shift its hind legs ever so slightly. Instantly, Domnu whirled around. You wouldn't be wanting to kick me now, would you? The black eyes flashed as she ran her finger slowly down the horse's mane. No, your manners are better than that. Much better. You must be wanting a bit more weight on your back. Yes, I am certain that's it. The barest whinny seemed to come from the stallion, its carved muscles almost tensed. Domnu bent over it and blew a long, gentle breath. Out of nowhere, a rough black stone, half the size of the horse itself, appeared on the middle of its back. While the stallion seemed to sag under the weight, it continued to hold its head high. There now, declared Domnu. That's much better. She spun to face me. Time for a little game of chess, she said in a voice more threatening than inviting. Before I return you to your, shall we say, friends waiting outside, you make the first move. Okay, so that was chapter 32. I almost said level 32. But tomorrow we will read chapter 33, called The Wager. So join me then. Have a good night. Bye.